And I say, come over, just come on over, you'll say.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Portland podcast. We are live right here in the Town Tech Educational Podcast Studio at Portland High School for our weekly update. And this is going to be episode 14. So we are here in the studio with Ms. Susan Bransfield. On the phone is going to be our Chatham Health Director, Mr. Russ Melmed, who has a whole lot of information to share with us. And calling in shortly is going to be our Public Works Director and Fire Chief, Mr. Bob Shea. So welcome, Susan. How are you?
Oh, very well. Good to be here, Dave. On let's see, we're recording, I believe, on July 16.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's a magical day. I've been told by someone this is a very special day for you, Dave. And I'm going to say happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Dave Kosminski. So it's a happy day.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
It's another notch in the tool or on the tool belt or something.
And I brought a little card for you.
Oh,
Dave.
thank you! Awesome, thank you, Susan. All right, is that Bob?
I am here, Dave.
Hey there, bud. How you doing? All right. Well, Susan, I think you're well rested because it was an extremely short selectmen's meeting last night, so I think we all got home and got a little rest. So
yeah, my husband wondered why I came home so early last night. But we certainly enjoy the efficiency that was afforded us last night. We had some good reports from our social justice group, Portland Social Justice. They did a nice job explaining some of the survey work that they've done. I'd encourage our listeners to take a listen and look at the website, theportlandct.org, and look at our meeting last night. There was some good information that April Graves gave us, and I think you'll find it very enlightening. In addition, last night at the Selectmen's meeting, we talked about the opening of the Portland Recreational Complex, which is off of Route 17. It will officially open, Dave, on Monday, July 20, 2020. And we are able to enjoy a 3/4-mile walking trail, a fitness circuit, a playscape, bocce courts, horseshoe pits. They're ready and open for use. In addition, as our listeners know, there are 2 soccer fields, 2 baseball fields that are going to be open for light usage this year. For this season, the turf needs to mature further, so there's no organized sports allowed on the fields for this season. However, we are able to have t-ball, kickball on the baseball fields, and yoga, and similar exercises can be done on the soccer fields. And the contractor who has been working with us on these beautiful fields will continue to work with us over the course of the next year, returning in the fall to fertilize and overseed the grass. I mean, there's a lot of things that still need attention, but July 20, light usage acceptable. The splash pad for our youngsters at this point has to remain closed due to the fact that the controller for the splash pad has to be programmed by the manufacturer, which is based up in Quebec. And because of COVID-19, they are unable to cross the U.S.-Canadian border at this time. So we're working with our engineers, Weston and Sampson, and DeRita Construction, the folks that did all the work on our park, and see if we can't come up with an alternative. So stay tuned. We'll be announcing the opening of the splash pad as soon as possible. The concession building, which includes bathrooms, will remain closed at this time, simply because we need to make sure that all of the final plumbing and interconnection to our water system is completed. And we also want to be certain that the cleaning and the frequency with which cleaning is done is in compliance with our COVID-19 guidelines. So we certainly, Dave, we're looking forward to this opening. I'll call it a soft opening. Any grand opening will be waiting until the spring of 2021 when, knock on wood, we hope that there is a better solution for COVID-19, be it a vaccination or appropriate treatment for the disease, and then we can have a group gathering to do the formal grand opening. As always, we're asking our participants in the park to follow all safety notices And please continue to follow the social distancing and the mask wearing when you're visiting our Portland Recreational Complex. We're so proud of this park. It's something that's been a long time in coming. A couple of years of actual physical work that's been done on the park, and a lot of work by our community to come together and have such a facility that we're very proud of and will be able to have as a community center. So maybe we can go out and take a walk, Dave, celebrate your birthday, and have some fun.
Absolutely, Susan. I think the committee should be commended. Ralph Zampano and the whole crew and his team did a great job. And, and they worked a long time making it all happen, but it's come to fruition. We're going to be doing some drone footage of the park, so folks will get to see and look at that and so forth. So when we all get in our yoga mats and go out and do yoga, we'll be all set. So you guys are still on the hook, Bob and Russ. So
Wait till you see that.
yeah, that's a visual, huh? Yay. Anyway, all right, great. Russ, thanks so much for coming on, and again, you've been busy as well as I think we all have, but more so. So tell us what's happening. I know that you had a nice op-ed article in the River East this past Friday, and so forth. So clue us in what's happening on the Chatham. Oh, by the way, I have to let you know that I was going through. I have my summer students working on some visuals for our Portland on the Move show, and I happened to come across a Portland on the Move show from 2006, and the title of the show was the Chatham Health District, and on the show was Thad King and Don Mitchell. So I'll have to see, and we all had hair back then. So.
Wow.
So that was good.
Don't ask me to do a reboot of that. We'll just keep that where it is.
All right, great. Anyway, so what's happening, Russ? Tell us.
Sure. So Chatham Health District is busy. I'd say less busy with COVID-19 cases, which is great. More busy with sort of a lot of routine work, a lot of environmental health inspections. People are doing a lot of work around their properties and taking out applications, which is great. So we're busy doing the normal stuff. We're also continuing to do our PPE pickups and deliveries to our healthcare entities, home health, hospice, primary care physicians, dentists, and urgent care clinics. So we're delivering PPE to them every week still, at least through August 7th, because the National Guard is the one doing all the logistics behind that activity. So if they don't get extended, I think that may end in August. But I think the governor just yesterday requested that their deployment be extended through the end of the calendar year. So I guess to be continued, perhaps. COVID-19, we're looking very, very good in Portland and elsewhere in Chatham Health District and really all around the state. Portland, we're still at 73 cases, which we were at last week as well, and I believe maybe even the week before, though we might have had some trickle in from earlier in June, and we just didn't find out about them for a week or two. We've not yet had a confirmed case reported to us in the month of July in Portland. So that's better than 2 weeks. The last confirmed case that we had reported to us in Portland was in the middle of June. So, what that says to me is that we've done a really good job of breaking the chains of transmission. We're not seeing a lot of community transmission. People, when we interview them during contact tracing, they largely understand where they got exposed, either through a family member or travel, or they work in a higher risk setting, like working in healthcare, in a long-term care facility, in the service industry, things like that, where we still are seeing some clusters of cases around the state. But for the most part, we're not seeing a lot of people show up with COVID-19 that have no idea where they got it, which is great. So we're seeing people get tested. Testing is up. We've seen testing accelerate across the district from the early days in March through now. I mean, in March, we were only seeing in Portland, I think, total 38 people got tested in March. And then in April, only 129. And then fast forward to June, and we had almost 600 people get tested in Portland alone. So testing is way up. It's available. If anybody feels sick at all, even if it's not classic symptoms, please go get tested. It might be a little bit uncomfortable to have your pharynx scrubbed with a stick, but it's better than transmitting infection to your neighbors and your friends and your family. So if you are feeling sick at all, go get tested. It's there. It's available. Turnaround times are somewhere between 1 and 3 days still, so that's very, very good. I looked to some of our neighbors to the south, and they're having a hard time with testing. They're trying to ramp up testing just as we did in March and April. They're trying to do that now in the face of tremendous numbers of cases. Lines extending miles for people in cars waiting to get tested, and turnaround times upwards of 10 days to 2 weeks. So we're in a different place here in Connecticut than some of the states to the south, so I don't want people to be alarmed. So if you feel sick, get tested. That's really important. When we get notified of a test result, if the test result is positive, you will get a phone call from Chatham Health District or the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health. So please answer your phone. If you've tested positive recently, within a couple of days, maybe within 1 day even, you will get a phone call. So if you see a number that you don't recognize, please answer it. It may be a contact tracer who just wants to discuss the test result, what it means for you, recommendations for you to isolate and to keep others in your social circle safe by staying home and staying away from others. And those contact tracers will ask you about other people you were in contact with when you were sick. That's a really important part of why we are where we are right now and how we can stay there. Helping, giving us that information so that we can reach out to those contacts of yours when you've tested positive is really important. We need to be able to reach people who are exposed before they get sick and then expose others to COVID-19. That's what contact tracing is. You get tested, the public health department is notified, we call you, and we support we either reach out to those contacts for you or we ask you if you've reached out to them already. And we ask that you help us out with that because that's how we can keep this going, keep us where we're at. Social distancing, wearing a mask, getting tested, and participating in this contact tracing program.
Sure.
All pillars of keeping us, pillars of supporting our COVID-19 prevention strategies in the state.
Sure. Russ, I know the governor instituted a procedure at Bradley and people flying in. How effective is that going to be as far as that goes?
So I'm not 100% familiar with the strategy of screening passengers when they come in. I don't think they're stopping people from entering the state. I think what they are doing is telling people what they have to do, which is quarantine. If they've come from a state, and I think there are 22 states now on the list, if they've come from a state where the COVID-19 situation is accelerating or in a bad place, the governor is asking all of those people to quarantine for 14 days when they arrive here. So wherever you're going, if you've rented a cottage on a lake, or if you've got a seasonal home in Connecticut, or you're coming to visit family, you can still do that, but we are asking you to quarantine for 14 days. That's really important because we don't want visitors or travelers to come here and trigger community transmission again.
Right.
We're doing a really good job here, so you can come visit Connecticut, but we are asking that you quarantine for 14 days. So that means staying home, not going out into public and doing the things that maybe you'd like to do. But it's really important. We don't want to we don't want to trigger more transmission here. So that's what's going on with the travel advisory.
Exactly. Well, that's interesting. I think a lot of airports are doing that, or states are doing it, especially in lieu of the outbreaks, throughout the United States, as far as that goes.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're saying is, travel to one of these hot spots is akin to being exposed to someone with COVID-19. We're making the conservative assumption that when you were there, because the numbers are so bad, that we assume you may have been exposed. And so we're going to treat you as such. Just as though, you might have come into contact with a family member who has COVID-19, we would call you and say, quarantine for 14 days and get tested. It's the same thing. If you travel, we're saying you might have been exposed, so quarantine for 14 days. Sure.
I think going back, on your op-ed article in the River East last Friday and so forth, I think one of the hot topics of discussion around throughout the state obviously is going to be reopening of the schools. So why don't you tell us kind of where we're kind of standing there?
Sure. Well, let me just correct one thing you said. It wasn't an op-ed. Even though I was heavily quoted, it might have seemed as though I wrote it. It was the reporter was actually Jack Wachowski, but I think he heavily quoted me on that front page. So it might have seemed as though I had written it. School reopening plan. So the state of Connecticut Department of Education released their reopening framework a couple of weeks ago, and since then, school districts have been actively planning for how to get students back into school buildings in the fall, because that is the central premise, that is the central goal of the state's plan, is to get as many students as possible back in school buildings for in-person learning in the fall. And with that goal in mind, the state plan laid out a series of requirements and guidelines for schools to follow as they develop their own plans. Every school district has to develop their own plan and submit it, I believe, to the State Department of Education by the 24th of July.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of good things in there, but then there were some gaps. So the good things, from my perspective, everybody wears masks. That's really important. When you're in an indoor space, even if you can stay 6 feet apart, when you're in an indoor space, we want everybody to wear masks to reduce the number of respiratory secretions that a potentially infectious person is spreading out into the environment. I think the requirement to wear masks is fairly restrictive. I think it basically says if you are unconscious or otherwise unable to remove your mask yourself, you have to wear a mask. If you fall into one of those two very narrow categories, you have to wear a mask. Or if you have a medical condition that makes it dangerous to wear a mask. Otherwise, everybody's going to be wearing masks. So I think that's a great idea. I know that there are a lot of parents out there who are wondering, how on earth is my child going to wear a mask for 7 hours? I would encourage all those parents out there to start practicing with your children now. I think there are a lot of kids who have worn masks for a period of time during this pandemic, an hour, 2 hours, something like that. 7 hours is very different. So I would just say, have some practice runs with your kids.
Good idea.
I'm going to do it with my kids. There are a few gaps that I think the state needs to fill in. I think I mentioned this in that article. One is sick child policies. What does it look like? What does a policy for a school look like? When a child is at school that day and sometime during the day they present with some symptoms. What does a school district do? Well, the one thing that's clear in the plan is schools have to have an isolation room where they can put that child and keep them away from everybody else. Great idea. What do we consider symptoms sufficient to be to suspect COVID-19? Are we assuming that any kind of mild illness is COVID-19 and it needs to be treated as such? Or is there going to be a list of symptoms that schools should look at and say, if it's any one of these, assume it's COVID-19. If it's any of these two, you should assume, is it a cough? Is it a fever? Is it shortness of breath? Is it loss of taste and smell? Is it aches and pains? So I think the sick child policy and what schools do when a child presents with illness is an important gap to fill. I think the other thing is, the state has suggested that there will be tiers, tiers of education plans that might dictate changes from full in-person learning to some hybrid model where we're deconcentrating schools and or on the range of going to distance learning, including some distance learning in those plans, all distance learning. So the tiers have not been defined. Mm-hmm. They've been loosely defined as, minimal community transmission, moderate levels of community transmission, and high levels of community transmission. But the state has not applied numbers to those words. And I think that's very, very important. It's important for everybody to know what the community looks like when they're going to be considering changes to the education plans. What are going to be the triggers where we're going to say, we've been doing really good with in-person learning, but it's starting to get, we're starting to see an uptick in community transmission of COVID-19, and we want to start deconcentrating schools. Instead of, full classrooms, let's go to, some different looking model where kids are home some of the time during the week or home all the time. And the state hasn't laid that out. I think that's very important for parents and teachers and administrators to understand what those triggers are and when they're going to happen. I don't think it's a good policy to make every school district decide on their own, what levels of community transmission they're comfortable with before they decide to change what they're going to do.
Right.
I think it's not going to look good for one school district in one part of the state to see one case in their community and say, we're abandoning in-person school, whereas another school district is seeing, 10 cases a week, and they're still fully in person. So I think those kinds of things really need to be spelled out a little bit more specifically, and I hope the state is preparing those kinds of benchmarks.
Sure. I think, the State Board of Education, I know our superintendent has been doing daily webinars and conference calls with the State Board as far as that goes. And we had our Board of Education meeting Tuesday night, which we Zoomed, and they've done a good job. They're working very hard. They sent out a survey to all of the parents and teachers and staff and so forth. So they're basically tabulating all of that information, and so they can best make their best guess assessments of where things are going. And as Superintendent Britton said, that it's changing every day. So we're kind of riding the tiger here.
Sure, exactly. And I think that I think the state plan allows for parents to decide on their own if they're going to send their child in person. And if they're not, I think school districts have to have a plan for how to educate those children who are staying home by choice.
Right.
I think that's definitely a challenge. I know that superintendents around the state are working very hard to figure out how to get that done and how to get that done well, and I have faith that they will. And some of those, I think it takes, everybody has a different comfort level with individual risk. My comfort level with different situations and the risk involved is different from somebody else's.
Right.
And I think that the state plan rightfully accommodates that. And I hope that the plans that our superintendents come out with, and I know they will ease some of those concerns of the parents who are wondering, what the school day is going to look like, and am I comfortable with sending my child or am I not? Hopefully the plans that the school districts put out are clear enough that parents can make those educated decisions. One other thing that I'll say that I think needs to be figured out are mask breaks. I was talking about kids wearing masks for 7 hours a day and how challenging that might be. Well, the state plan does say that schools must allow students to have mask breaks, but it doesn't really say what that looks like. Where are those going to take place, inside or outside, in a special room or in the same classroom? Is everybody going to take their masks off or just a few? Is it going to be for just 30 seconds or is it going to be for 5 minutes? I think there are a lot of parents who are, worried if their child is going to be able to tolerate the mask. The mask breaks are important because I think that's trying to figure out ways to balance the need to wear masks with the level of physical discomfort that some children may experience and need to take those breaks. So I'm eager to see sort of what the mask breaks also, how those take shape.
Right. Well, and again, everything is just so fluid and it's moving every day. From that standpoint, yeah, you get to a point where you have to develop a plan, and hopefully there's I think overall the state of Connecticut has done a good job as far as managing this pandemic, and I think that bears true with the numbers that we're seeing around the state.
I think that when I look at the numbers of cases that we're seeing every week in our towns, I would be very surprised, and the contact tracing and what we're learning, I would be very surprised if, tomorrow, if schools opened, if a child were to walk into school with COVID-19 and not know it.
Sure.
That's the truth of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it becomes challenging when parents feel pressure to go to work or to keep their child home and stay home with that child when they or their child is sick. So I think a successful reopening plan really does hinge on every single parent and student doing the things they have to do to keep everybody safe.
Right.
And that means if your child is sick, you keep them home.
Sure.
If you are sick with anything resembling COVID-19, go get tested. Those are the kinds of things everybody needs to do, as opposed to perhaps what somebody might have done in a normal flu season, which is to say, here, take these couple of Advil and go ahead. You're not that sick.
Right.
That's what we want to avoid, for sure.
Sure. Well, I think, from that standpoint, it's, and I think that's what the state has done a good job in. And I mean, I think they're basically relying on the science, okay? And what the science dictates, that's what direction we're going.
That's right.
As far as that goes. So I know, we're trying to reopen as, as prudently and as safe as we can. And I know, as Susan announced last night, I think, we're starting to open up a little bit on the senior center. They're going to be supplying rides, correct, Susan?
That's right, yeah.
you know.
Starting on Monday, one person per van, per ride with the driver, and
great.
trying to accommodate our seniors' need to get to their appointments.
Yeah, because
That's
that was an important service, that
It is.
seniors relied on, and
Absolutely.
that was great, But and again, you're dealing with that age group and that demographic that is highly susceptible, to this pandemic. So you have to kind of protect and take all the safeguards you can. So.
But again, all of this is only possible because we've gone through some really difficult times, and we're all doing the right things. So we
Sure.
have to all keep doing the right things so that we can keep doing the things that we want to do. As my mother always said to me, you have to do the things you have to do so that you can do the things you want to do. And I
There you
think
go.
That rings true to me today.
Well said, Russ. All right, Russ, thanks so much for all your valuable information. And again, kudos to your staff and your whole organization out there that have really been doing a yeoman's job and certainly been put to the task through this whole thing, as far as
Yeah.
that goes. So anyway, great. Thanks, Russ.
Yep.
Okay, Robert, are you still there, Robert?
I am here, and
Awesome. All
great
right.
information from Russ, as it always is. And we continue, on that path. We've extended our response protocols related to EMS services for another 60 days, which means that our dispatch protocols have been changed and will remain the same since early April. And they've been working for us, so we're going to continue to do that within the Middlesex County area, which is basically protecting us as responders as well as those that we're going to assist. So we're going to continue to stay on that track, which is just a limited response, so we can control the effects or the exposure if that happens. But as Russ has stated, that we've been in good shape here for a little bit of time. We hope that continues. Our response to those, positive or precautionary calls has been extremely limited. Although we're seeing a little more on the motor vehicle side as people start getting out, and our response to CO, fire alarms, as well as miscellaneous calls. So we're still following all our precautions, but I'm glad that we decided to extend our revamped protocols for response, because that seems to be really protecting our first responders rather than going to those generic calls that are being strictly handled by the paramedics and the ambulance services. Anything I spoke before, that is in a critical nature that we need to get to, we are dispatched and we will be there within our average response time of 4 minutes. So we're there to help, and it's been working, so we'll continue that. Our PPE has got to a level where I'm really comfortable with, not only on the town level but EMS side. So our national stockpile has really helped with that, and the pickup that we've been doing every week has contributed to making that happen. I think that's going to end sometime in August, and we'll be basically on our own to continue to purchase what we need. But they've supplied an awful lot of equipment. We've been lucky to pass that on not only to our police stations as well as our EMS and fire side, and then we're doing our best to make the purchases that we need to do for PPE for our town employees, which we're good, and I'm happy to say that I think we will be for some time. So that makes us all feel a little better and get a little more rest.
Yes.
But I think we're doing well, but we really need to continue our efforts. As Russ said, just keep your distance, stay on the plan, don't make any changes, and try to make sure that this is the path that we continue on, and we certainly don't want to see what's happening in some other areas. I think we can certainly stay the course, as they would say.
Sure, absolutely, Bob. Absolutely. On the public works side, I think I know you're on the bridge committee, so give us an update on the bridge happenings.
Yeah, the bridge is moving along. They're continuing to do more work on the Middletown side. You'll start to see some of the work that's being planned. There's an awful lot of utility work that's being done over there. You'll see conduit out in certain areas. They're going to be doing bump outs, and they've, I believe, started some of that work, bump outs for the sidewalks, and those are specifically to shorten the distance of the crosswalk between one side of the road and the other, and they've proved to, make those areas safer. You're spending less time in the lanes, and it also protects some of the cars in those parking areas as well. So they're working there, St. John Square. That area has been pretty active. Mm-hmm. What people need to remember is that the bridge will be closed to alternate traffic during the day occasionally. There's no schedule for it. It happens often. Usually it's a 5-minute or 10-minute delay at the most, and then traffic is allowed to proceed. That's going to happen throughout the project. There'll be lane closures and bridge closures for certain periods of times at night as they're working. Haven't seen too many issues with that, but we certainly want to make people aware that, you could come up upon the bridge and it may be closed for 5 minutes or so, and you'll have to wait in traffic. So be patient. Reduce your speed going over the bridge. You got a lot of construction workers there as well. You certainly don't want to cause something that creates a very messy situation as far as traffic and people that are now out and about, maybe back to work and moving along, to be stuck in traffic, especially in heat. So, and we don't want to have to respond to that location to help you either. So right now it seems to be going very well. Good construction company. The state has been very involved, so things are going good there.
Great. Anything else happening on the DPW side, Bob? Or?
Yeah, we're just busy. We finished our Maple Road project. We're off to looking to pave that lower section of High Street that goes to Bartlett. That's probably planned for sometime in August, waiting for a TILCON schedule on that because of the availability of materials. The plants are just getting up and running for the past month, so their scheduling is a little behind, but we're on the target. We've already done all the catch basins in that area to make improvements, safety improvements for the side of the road to make sure that that area, when it is milled and paved, will be a little safer coming down the hill, not as many rumbles, so we're looking forward to get that project done next. Guys are out making the roads, are preparing the roads right now for our chip sealing program, which we will get out in the River East next week and identify those roads that will be chip sealed this year. So we've done crack sealing and making some pavement improvements before we do that. That chip sealing will begin the second week of August. Hopefully that is still on schedule. We've already started bringing some materials in. My greatly awaited project for the salt shed looks like it will start in the next week or two. That's been awarded for improvements to our salt shed area per our DEEP and DPH requirements that we, luckily enough, have a grant for, which will cover the majority of the work there. So there'll be activity, but it'll be off the road. But if people are driving by, they'll see a lot of activity there as far as lining to protect the aquifer, the salt shed, and doing some important drainage work to remove any contaminated rainwater or whatever that may happen during storms off of the aquifer protection to protect our well. That serves us so greatly in town, and that should start too. So we have a lot of things going on. I'm happy to report, and Susan probably isn't aware of this, but the project at the library started today. They are starting the LED retrofit of all the lights in the library, and that is progressing. That probably will go on for at least a week or two, and then they'll be back to evaluate, make some changes if needed. So that's a great project, and I'm glad that the board moved forward with some of the recommendations that we made, and I think that's going to be a wonderful energy sustainability project for the library and serve that area well into the future, especially as just a added benefit on all the work that's been done there with the retrofit and the revitalization of the library. So.
Great. I think that's some great work, and I think from that standpoint, it's keeping the ball rolling, keeping it going, and doing some things that again make us more sustainable and more energy efficient. And but great job with your staff, Bob, and as well as not only on the EMS side. It's how does it feel now? You've been wearing the fire department or the fire chief hat for many years now. How does it feel to have another hat on the hat rack?
My head's not big enough.
I hear you.
It's twofold. It's a lot. I'm able to do things that I wasn't able to do now working in town, so that is definitely a help. Meetings and coordinating things, with Susan's office and as well as some of the personnel that's here during the day. That's certainly a benefit. Working with finance on the fire side that I had to do distantly before, which was difficult with the work that I did outside, and I was quite far away, about 50 miles. So that has definitely been a benefit. But the services are changing. The work is a lot, and I have some good people in the fire department that are backing up the office and making it happen. So it's been 19 years. It's been a great run. I'm not sure when the end will come. I'm looking for that guy that really wants it, but they don't seem to be knocking my door down. But right now it's good, and the support that we have is great, and all the departments, and I feel the same with DPW. I mean, sewer and water, they work hard every day along with highway. We have so many great departments, and the guys are really striving. Grounds, a limited crew are out doing what they can, and they're working 8 or 9 hours a day out there, and it's pretty hot, and they never complain, and they're moving along. So we should be proud of what they do.
Oh, for sure. Well, good. Thanks, Bob, for all your great work and your whole team that the town should be proud of. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.
So anyway, I think that's about it, Susan.
Yeah, I think a great report, Bob, and great report, Russ. It's so encouraging to hear that COVID-19 is not very present in our town because of all the things that our listeners are doing and their neighbors and friends. So let's keep up the good work, Dave.
Absolutely. Go from there. And I think with the Board of Selectmen's obviously notice for the COVID tax relief plan on the low interest, and that's going to help tremendously.
Absolutely.
With our customer, and so which would be good. So, all right, that's great. Well, I think that brings our episode 14 to a close. Again, Russ, thank you so much for doing what you do and calling in every week to give us the update on what's happening. We certainly do appreciate that.
My pleasure.
All right, and Bob as well. And so I'm your host, Dave Kosminski. We're live here in the town of Portland, Town Tech Educational Podcast Studio at Portland High School. So we're certainly getting our use out of our studio up here and getting a lot of information out there. And again, our podcasts are available through all of our podcast channels, whether it's iHeart, Anchor, YouTube, iTunes, or whatever. You can go onto our website and wherever you consume all of your media, it's there. We also air our podcasts on the public access channel at Channel 15 for the Comcast channel on Tuesdays from 9 a.m. In the morning and also 4 p.m. in the afternoon, so to go from there. So until next week, as Russ would say, stay home, stay safe, and wash your hands. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Dave Kosminski. Please tune in every week for new and relevant conversations about the town of Portland. You can find us at portlandct.org or at YouTube/Town of Portland, and now wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please consider subscribing and sharing with friends. This podcast was produced by the Town Tech Educational Partnership Program, which is a partnership between Portland High School and the Portland Town Hall. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or organization, check out towntech.org/podcast to learn more.